Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's roundtable discussion, The Future of IT. I assume everyone can see my screen? Excellent. My name is Bill Craig. I'm Senior Manager of Marketing with GSI, and I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. But more importantly, let's talk about our panelists today. I'm very pleased to welcome our panelists for today's roundtable. Starting with Mike DeRoche. Mike is the Senior Director of Gartner's Technology and Service Providers Group. Mike covers cloud computing, IT and cloud services, managed services, edge, CDN, digital transformation, and as a service focused on the business of technology. Prior to Gartner, Mike spent 22 years at IBM in the Global Services Business Unit, where he had offering strategy, go-to-market, service product responsibilities in outsourcing, managed services, cloud, technical ecosystem development. Mike is a graduate of Temple University. Next, I'd like to introduce Kevin Herrick, President and CEO of GSI. Kevin is a Principal Technology Specialist with more than 25 years experience in software engineering, system integration, network engineering, and enterprise systems architecture. In 2004, Kevin founded GSI, which provides a broad spectrum of services for G.D. Edwards, NetSuite, HubSpot, ServiceNow, BMC, and other enterprise applications. They also offer an extensive array of cloud and cybersecurity solutions. Prior to starting GSI, Kevin worked at Oracle as a consulting services manager and program manager. He also worked as a technology lead for a major Oracle implementation partner. Kevin is a graduate of Georgia Institute of Technology with a bachelor's degree in information and computer science. Last but certainly not least, I'd like to introduce John Bassett, CTO and Chief Information Security Officer at GSI. John is a seasoned IT specialist with more than 25 years experience as a technology strategist, cybersecurity expert, software engineer, network manager, and system implementer. John has his ISO 27001 information security certification as a lead implementer, and John is a graduate of The Ohio State University with a Bachelor of Science in Information Systems. Okay, let's keep on going. Now, before we get started, I wanted to give you a chance to review our safe harbor statement. Okay, now for a quick overview of today's roundtable discussion. First, I'd like to cover a couple of housekeeping items and provide a brief company overview. Then we're going to move into our roundtable discussion, which is going to last about 30 minutes, and then we're going to wrap up with a 10-minute question and answer session. Okay, on the housekeeping front, if you would like to submit a question, you can do so through the Q&A option, which you'll see right there on your screen. And you'll see that on your Zoom console bar, which is either located, depends on how you have it configured, but either it's going to be at the top or the bottom of your screen. But that's where you're going to submit your questions to our panelists. Please note that all questions are going to be answered at the end of the roundtable discussion. Okay, let's keep it going. So let's talk about GSI. GSI offers a broad spectrum of consulting and managed services for enterprise ERP, ITSM, CRM, and other applications. We also offer an extensive array of cloud, SaaS, and cybersecurity solutions. GSI has industry, application, and technical certifications and expertise. So not only do we understand your systems, but most importantly, we understand your business. All of GSI's products and services use advanced AI and automation to help our clients reduce TCO and increase their ROI. GSI has offices nationwide and partners worldwide, which allows us to offer a 24/7 global support model. And they offer 100% guarantee on everything they do. Okay, let's get into our roundtable. Okay, the first topic for our panelists is discuss the changing nature of the enterprise, as well as the changing nature of work and how it will impact IT over the next 5 years. Mike, you want to kick things off?
Thanks, Bill, and good afternoon to everybody. So, when I think about the next 5 years and the changing nature of everything that's going on, right, we think about a couple things here at Gartner. First and foremost is, over the last 2 or 3 years of the pandemic, we've really, redefined where IT needs to deliver and where we work. So the first thing I think that's really going to be, kind of changes in our venues of IT. It's not just going to be on the edge of a corporate network or on a mobile device. It literally is going to be anywhere. And, we think that trend is going to add significant complications to everything we do. If you think about, 2 years ago, IT turned our enterprises inside out in about 6 weeks. And in the last 18 months, we've been remediating a lot of that. And I don't think we're necessarily going back to the old ways of kind of fixed networking and what have you, but we are seeing now that, a lot of the advantages and advancements in composable applications and low code, no code, in security and other things are going to be made more complicated by this, fact that we're going to be working and computing from just about anywhere you can possibly imagine. The other thing too is I think that, with a lot of the different other trends, and some of which we'll get into later, that are beginning to take over, is obviously data and analytics are the lifeblood of just about every enterprise. But we also believe that, automation is going to become more important, and not just automation of IT tasks or repetitive kind of business tasks, but every bit of business that can be done. We've seen this with the rise of things like ServiceNow as a backbone and other things. But the complication factors is really going to be the various diverse endpoints we're going to be working from. And, how we secure something on a corporate network, or optimize an app for a corporate network, or build a data set that will be only consumed on a corporate network, has serious implications when we start to externalize all that from a security, from a governance, from a compliance, from a, just an operational perspective.
Thanks, Mike. John, Kevin?
From GSI's perspective, having managed an IT department over the last couple of years to see what is changing, a lot of companies had to resort to working remotely, scrambling to get VPNs, and not understanding the full security implications of what people are doing on their home networks, or what other tasks they might have, whether their computers or other computers have viruses on them. And it's been challenging, to say the least, to get all of the remote people up and running. We were fortunate that we were a remote company to begin with. We had a few people that did a lot of traveling, so I'd say that they were mobile at the time and had to go into the office. So it just increased the IT serviceability.
All right. I'm going to look at this from the people perspective. And that's kind of what I look at every day. And I think the IT teams are going to be in a better frame of mind, honestly. I mean, we all know that the days of spending, hours and days and sleeping in the office and doing those things, now is at home. So I think there's a better mindset with regards to it. Now, you lose some creativity without everybody being together, but there's ways to do that via Zoom and things like.
We lose Kevin?
I think we might have lost
Kevin. Yeah.
Yep. Kevin was having trouble, so we can
give him a minute here. Kevin, Kevin, we lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, sorry. I'm saying that I think that the IT, it's better off this way, because the IT personnel is in a better position mentally, because you're at home. You don't have to travel in. You don't have to sleep under the desk. You don't have to do any of those things anymore. You just got the ability to do things, get things done in your time frame, and just be in a happier place, as opposed to just staying in the office all the time like we used to do.
Okay. Mike, Kevin, John, appreciate it. Let's move on to our next question. Yeah, bring that up on the screen here. Okay, our next question is, what is IT everywhere? What are the implications, security concerns, endpoint issues, and more?
Yeah, so I mean, IT anywhere, IT everywhere is, kind of words Gartner's beginning to use, and I think we're seeing in other parts of the industry to describe this phenomenon, not only of, working from wherever remotely, our teams being distributed through various places, but also thinking about, kind of the shifting aspects of, what IT is being asked to deliver. Even, certain industries and certain spaces, smart devices are now becoming part of the environment. So we now have to extend IT, security and management and compliance and telemetry and, all of that stuff to, known data points that change hourly, right? Known endpoints that may change daily or weekly. And, it's funny because, mobility always was the kind of a bit of a second class citizen in most enterprises, right? The sales teams and the people out in the field had those types of things. But now we need to rethink not only, kind of the base technologies our end users and our employees use, but where we place applications and how we optimize applications and where we place data sets and all of those types of things, because we're not all on a corporate WAN anymore, right? And I think that, to Kevin's earlier point, this allows for a lot greater flexibility in employment and in how you work and the amount of hours we get to put in and what have you. But it also creates that complexity where, from day to day, the security posture, the compliance posture, even just being able to know what's going on a user's PC is going to become more difficult. We're going to have to figure out this remote thing, right? I know we know how to distribute software remote and we're okay at supporting people that work remotely, but we're going to need more automation to be able to do that at scale, right? We can't let the human pieces of this at a help desk or on a tool set become the limiting factor. But this idea of IT anywhere is been very much a product of the last 10 years of devices in our hands that are smarter than the computers we work on at work some days, right? And we also see a shift also in some of the skills and labor markets as well, whereas more and more people are going to be working not as full employees of enterprises, right? You're going to be a gig employee or a gig economy coder or a problem solver or a quick 6-week project type of contract, those types of things. So we're going to have to think about how and what we expose to those workers as well as we go forward. But I think the biggest thing is the velocity of change in our environments is going to up pretty dramatically over the next couple of years as this begins to become more and more important. And we'll see edge and some other technologies really begin to be accelerated because of just the diversity of locations, right?
Yeah. And I would add to it, the attack surface has increased exponentially. That's a huge issue. I mean, if you're not watching, who's doing what when you go into Starbucks or any of these places here and who's, can have a pineapple device and get your stuff, or even at a gym. You don't know any of this stuff anymore because we're always on the go. Now we're at home, and that's easy stuff to do. You've got to be aware of those things. And John here has talked about on a few of the podcasts, like, look, having your user ID, which would normally be inside of a WAN and we'd be good with and everything, but is your email. I mean, that's 50% of the equation, email and password, right? You already know what it is if you can find someone's email. So not using that as your user ID, having, passwords be 11 characters. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. I mean, we do this testing inside of GSI with know before and, fish testing. And I can tell you, just as a training exercise, don't ever be on the phone when you click a link. Okay. That's a bad thing to do. Okay. I've gotten caught once, and that was because I was on the phone and not paying attention. So I've learned my lesson on this, but it's great training to know because we have to be more trained. There's social engineering and people following you now where you live, all of these kind of things that you don't know who's coming in there, who's listening, everything. I won't join an open Wi-Fi at all. I'll just use the data. That's just what it is at this point in time. There's so many things to watch out for now that the attack surface, again, has just exponentially increased. And there's ways to get in now, and QR codes being the next big one that's coming out there right now where you're going to get hacked on and stuff like that. It's a mess. There's a lot to it. I mean, the mental aspect of being at home and everything is great, but the mental aspect of covering your tracks is exponentially worse than it was.
From an education standpoint, we use Know Before, but it's critical to make sure now that there is a remote workforce now and IT everywhere. Even sitting at a restaurant where you used to have menus, you no longer have menus. You have a menu on a QR code. Okay, Kevin mentioned QR codes, but who would have thought sitting in a restaurant you'd get hacked, right? And it's a problem that didn't necessarily exist a few years ago. Those devices weren't, and technologies just really weren't being used for that purpose.
Yeah, I was shocked at some data our security guys, our coverage guys brought forward about, the amount of incidents in collaborative software, things like Teams and Zoom and, all of these different things that, we think because they're a service being provided by a large technology company or a technology company, there's some inherent amount of security there. But it's still, you still need to have good hygiene as a consumer of that stuff. If you're using Teams, which is basic Microsoft security, that's one thing. If you're not using a VPN for your corporate stuff, that's a whole different problem, right? And those layers now of security and the assumptions, right? The other thing too that we're becoming more concerned about is both data sets and pieces of code that are floating around out there, right? With everything now being continuous improve, continuous development, continuously updating, the amount of change on a PC or a phone or a data set, kind of happens at a rate that we're not really always able to react, right, to some of the security threats that are going on there. So I think the velocity and on top of the attack surface is really getting a lot crazier. And we're seeing now, state-led, hacking and state-led security penetration and other things going on in the world, right? So, it's really become much more complex. Now, on the other hand, we also have better tools than we ever did. So, I think that's the other thing too, is staying ahead in the arms race in security as well, right?
Yeah. And I would add that we make sure, even for our clients, that we do vulnerability scans on the software that they use, right? Don't think just because it's a publicly traded company and it's a very popular app that their security posture is any better than other people that are small. I'm telling you right now, it's not. Right. And we won't do business with certain companies unless their vulnerability score is at least an 800. And we've tested many of these, and we got it brought to our attention 5 years ago on this same type of thing too. And we thought everything was great, but it's not. And you got to know where it's going in. And we have things like Veracode that goes and checks our code to make sure what libraries and stuff are vulnerable on that side of it. It's a non-stop daily grind to make sure this checking every single day. And that's why we even put in a vCISO offering from our side of it to help clients with what do they need to cover? What do I need to look at? What is my attack surface? What is my posture? Where are my vulnerabilities? Because there's so much to it. It's just not like a one-person job, and not everybody's the largest client and can afford to have these people on staff. So it's a big undertaking.
Yeah, the other thing we're hearing more and more about is, especially with the amount of code being written, the amount of automation being created and things like that, is the use of some of the public repositories and things like that. Everybody does good hygiene until it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you need a snippet of code from a public GitHub, right? And you never know what you quite get, right? Because you're in a hurry. So I think, it's again, I think, the ever-changing threat is also due to the complexity of the ever-changing technology, right? And I think, one of the things that I've always, admired about GSI is their security first kind of mindset here. And, that real idea that you're just because you ran a security scan this morning doesn't mean you're secure, right? And things can change in a couple of seconds because somebody does something dumb, unintentionally dumb, like grabs a piece of code or borrows a graphic off of a website, and it has something embedded in it. We get caught we get caught by this, and we're people that report on this industry, right, all the time. You do things in a hurry. To your point about not clicking on anything when you're on the phone, right? It very much is. You think, oh, it's safe until it's not, right?
One thing I wanted to point out is small companies today have just about an equal chance of getting hacked as a medium or large company, and the small companies may not be able to afford a security person, but they still have the same need. The vCISO can help with that, but in the meantime, don't, at least watch what you're clicking on, go through some of the education so that you're not clicking where you shouldn't.
Yeah, and the best thing that you can do is get a vulnerability scan. If you can come to us, if you want to go to whoever, it doesn't matter. But no, it's like your credit score. You always want to know your credit score. So you want to know your vulnerability score. That's a huge, huge one. I mean, there was things in there that we didn't know that we were using some antiquated, calls and everything like that. And we're like, what? And, TSL, whatever it was, or TLS 1 point, whatever. And I was just like, wait, what? And then they showed me what you could do with that. And that's a problem. So it's important that you guys know these things. Did it cut out, Bill?
Just for a minute there, or excuse me, a second there, Kevin.
All right, sorry. Vulnerability scan, very important. Know your score, like your credit score. Know it all the time. You need to protect it too.
Well, thank you, Kevin, John, Mike. Let's move on to our next topic. Let me just share my screen here so everyone can see it. Okay, our next topic, and very relevant to what's already been discussed, but discuss the challenges related to IT skills with the changing nature of the enterprise.
Yeah, this is this is the probably problem 1B that everybody has right now, and that is that the amount of skills that are needed to push the technologies forward, the modern technologies forward, just aren't available in the market. And it's not just cloud and edge and modern application and stuff. We're also seeing the beginnings of the graying out of VMware skills and Oracle skills and other skills, because we just there's not a big enough pipeline. And if you look at what's happening in the industry, we've seen, salary inflations and compensation inflations to the point where, people that were entry level 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, are making 40 to 70% more base salary, because you can't afford to lose people and rehire people. You're just not out there. Every client, every service provider is competing with everybody else for the talent that's out there. And it's really amazing. The big cloud providers will have to adjust their compensation packages to keep people from being poached, right? When Amazon, Microsoft, and Google have to do that, what does a small bank in New York or a manufacturing company in Alabama do to compete, right? You just can't find people. We think this is going to be a problem for the better part of a decade, right? And we're seeing, all the big technology players begin to invest in, kind of longer term training programs, rehire programs. AWS is investing, tens of millions of dollars in 40 countries to build pipelines of talent that potentially can be exploited over time to be able to do these things. But yeah, it's all across just about every part of the industry. And this whole great rethinking of how we work and where we work is also taking another chunk of people out of the market, right? And marketplace. And so, with the flexibility of work from wherever, it's going to be a very competitive landscape. But we see, especially, modern coding skills, modern cloud skills, security skills, networking skills are very much in demand. And any big application set, right? If you try to hire an SAP or an Oracle or a big kind of engine type of support or technician of late, they're very hard to find and they're very expensive. I mean, I get calls on mainframe skills that I haven't used in 30 years that are still on my resume somewhere in some recruiting office, right? And I've gotten some pretty ridiculous offers to go write COBOL again, but it's probably not a growth industry for me. But you just think about what we have, and that's the other thing is we keep using this word legacy for technology in this industry, right? IT now is mainframes to the edge and beyond to an endpoint, right? And those skills are still in demand, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to some of those more mature technologies as the graying out of and the retiring of a generation of IT workers begins to move on.
From our side of it, you got to look at it as you should always be supplementing your in-house skills with partners, because partners see other companies, other ways of doing things, where a lot of our clients get institutionalized on the way they do it, and that's always the way we've done it. You want to learn from that. You can learn from these partners. And if you're going to find the right partner, to Mike's point there, you've got to talk to the partner about their culture and their people, because keeping those are important too, and the continuity of who's going to be working on your system. We take it very seriously here. I mean, lucky for us, we've been almost 18 years in business, and we've worked from home from day one. So we've known this, disparate work environment for a long, long time. We've kind of, worked on different models over the years, but we believe in training, and not just for your current role, but for where you want to go in your career. If you're not talking about people's careers and where they want to go, and you're just talking about their role and getting them better in it, you're going to lose people. And it's important that you understand that and make sure to get them and spend the time. At GSI, we have a certain amount of time that's spent on your current role and getting the certifications and the training that you need, And then there's the other part of it. The other half of the time is your career. Where do you want to go? Let's learn something new. You want to be, a cloud architect. Well, let's put you in, that path. It's very important stuff, but it comes back again to the culture. We're a Richard Branson mentality, so to speak, that we train people to do whatever they want to do so they can go anywhere they want to go, but treat them the right way so they never want to leave. And that's evident with a lot of the people that we have and things that you'll see out there that, that rate us and everything. We think it's extremely important. Most important asset to any company is its people, period, end of story. You got to invest in them.
We've experienced the culture change at GSI. Caught us a little off guard, maybe because it was during the pandemic, but the inflation of wages in the IT happened right before our eyes. We lost one or two good people strictly on price, and kind of shaking our heads. Whoa, what happened? And then when we tried to replace them, we realized incomes for those people are going up and the skills are going up. And what we're making sure is that everyone that works for us is properly trained in multiple areas. There's some free cloud training out there, like Oracle will provide cloud training at no cost to date. They may change that at any time, but there's certainly tools like Udemy and other places for them to get education, but we try to make sure that we're competitive and that they're constantly learning something new and working on the things that they enjoy. And the good news is a lot of what's going on in IT, the people that we have found have had a real passion for the work. They're excited. A work day isn't 9 to 5. A work day is what it takes to get the job done because they love doing it. And that's we're seeing a lot of that in the industry as well.
Yeah, it's brought some changes in the way people think about using service providers too. We're definitely seeing an uptick in interest in externalizing some of the IT functions because of not only the skills thing, but just being behind the curve on technology adoption and other things. But it's something very important for any customer or anybody contemplating this is beyond asking the usual questions of, can you do what I need you to do? It's talking about staffing plans and training plans and talent acquisition and things like that. You're in a 3-year relationship or longer with a service provider and they don't have good answers for staffing now. They're not going to 3 years from now, right? And like I said, this is going to take us probably the better part of a decade to get us, kind of back to the levels of supply versus demand in IT. Even if there is economic upheaval and other things, there's just not enough skills to go around. So asking those questions about how many certified people and how many hours of training do they have and what's your hiring plan for the next couple of years, those types of things are becoming much more important. And the vendors that do that well are going to win, GSI being one of them, right? The other trend we're also seeing is, customers of all sizes are looking for an anchor, service provider that can provide, enough reach to be, kind of the big anchor of operations for them, but also can act as that general contractor in the middle of the customer environment. And if they don't have skills or talent or knowledge on something, they can bring others, subcontractors to the table as well. We're seeing this kind of return to an outsourcing-esque type of approach. We don't know if that's ephemeral and just short term to get through the skills hump, or that's just kind of returning to the traditional cycles of the industry yet. My bet is because of the skills need and just the specific skills need, it's probably going to be a return to more of a kind of an outsource, out-task type of model. Not your mess for less, and I'm going to take your data centers and all that, but this idea of longer term relationships with a bigger vendor in the middle being the general contractor, right?
Okay. Well, thanks, Mike, John, Kevin. Let's move to our next topic. Just share my screen here. Okay, with more and more data being processed on the periphery of the network in a distributed IT infrastructure, how will edge computing impact your planning and decisions over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, edge is something we talk about daily. Well, just about every customer type we do here at Gartner. And, we think that we're at the very beginnings of edge. We're beginning to see some interesting things be done with it, obviously around data placement and data gathering, especially in some of these bigger systems like ERP systems or MRP systems, logistics systems, people being able to instrument and gather and manipulate data locally aside from the bigger, the bigger data sources in the sky is becoming very important. The localization of data and content is becoming much more important. So, the things that Edge will bring around quality of service, quality of experience, those types of things is going to become more important. But, one of the important things to remember is, just like, 10 or 12 years ago, we were all knowing cloud was going to be a big part of our future, but weren't exactly sure what it was going to do for us in specifics. I think we're kind of there with Edge. I think there's a lot of very interesting use cases that are emerging beyond the traditional IoT and things like that, but it's still at the very early days. But this is where a lot of the energy is. Almost every big tech provider we talk to, every big ISV and software vendor, they're beginning to understand that the architectures and topographies and infrastructure patterns are changing pretty dramatically. And, we're also beginning to hear from customers that, the things they need to do need to be done very localized and very transactionally out as far away from the data center as possible in the field. So I think, everybody's pushing to there. I also think we'll begin to see applications be decentralized to a certain degree and componentry spread to where it makes the most sense. And, from the back wall of the data center to the endpoint sitting in a manufacturing center somewhere, right? Type of thing. But, Edge is big. It's coming for a chunk of the cloud market. I think of Edge as, kind of an extension of what cloud is promising to deliver. We still have an awful lot of kind of work to do to make it really, truly, fully operational for most clients. But, we've been doing Edge for a long time. CDNs have been Edge for 20 plus years. A lot of that technology will be repurposed. We're beginning to see more and more, startups in the Edge space around, data security, provenance, orchestration. The Kubernetes market is still booming. I think it's overcapitalized and too many different players. But, I think, this whole idea of containerization and write once, run anywhere is going to drive more Edge and more interesting topographies of applications. That, again, will add to the complexity of security, compliance, governance, management, and all the other stuff as well as demand a bunch of new skills, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, the invention of ERP came because everything was decentralized and they wanted a way to centralize. So decentralized, central, now we're going back to decentralized.
Yep.
History has a way of repeating itself. Cloud is making that available to us, that we can do those types of things. And, it's good to see that people have changed their mentality from cloud just being a DevOps type of engagement or offering or service to being part of the infrastructure. I mean, I think that's extremely important if businesses are going to continue to grow and get, a power on demand, so to speak.
At GSI, our clients have seen a big expansion in Edge technologies, things like IoT, and also from an ERP perspective, we've also seen a lot of orchestrations. Things that people used to do with a notebook and piece of paper, they're now pushing to orchestration type software to get the data collected and into a centralized location. So it's definitely expanding.
Yeah, and if you think about the influx of, the smarting of almost every piece of consumer technology you can think of, right? I saw a smart coffee pot the other day. I don't know why you'd want a coffee pot to talk to you at 5 o'clock in the morning, right? Just give me my bloody cup of coffee. But you think about the explosion of consumer data that's not going to be available from all of these devices. You think about, I have a friend of mine in the insurance industry, in car insurance, and he works in their advanced projects group. And they're talking about, within 5 to 10 years, not even needing a claims adjuster to come look at your car. The instrumentation in the car will tell you what's broke in the accident, right? And, be able to transmit that back to your insurance in a hurry and, process all that, take a couple digital pictures, and that's your claim. Right, type of thing. And I think that's going to be very interesting. There's going to be a lot of ramifications around Edge, legally, privacy, other things because of that. But the explosion of data is also going to drive that. I mean, like I said, data is the lifeblood of industry and enterprise now. And, as more and more things become, smart, and we walk around with watches that are smarter than the computers that sent men to the moon, right? That data is going to become, even that much more valuable. And that Edge is going to be pushed further and further, out from the data center. And this decentralization, I think, also will bring some interesting challenges and opportunities for resiliency and, fault tolerance and other things as well. We've seen what happens when a large cloud provider loses its primary data center where their tooling is all in, and the chaos that creates right up and downstream from them, right? So I think that complexity is going to be a very interesting challenge for us to overcome. But it's not this, it's the same challenge we've overcome every time we've moved modes, right? From mainframe to distributed to client server to cloud to this now, right? And you're right, Kevin, every about 12, 15 years, the cycle swings back and we have to learn the hard lessons again, right?
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I started in computer science, we'll just say a few decades ago. And I was doing artificial intelligence back then, and what the tree was, does it bark? No, kind of thing. Is it a dog? That kind of thing. To see where it's come now, it is amazing. I mean, things are so smart. I mean, we have a tool at GSI called Genius AI that goes in and monitors systems, and based on different anomalies can tell you what the problem is on that side of it. Now, I'm a little bit, I probably watched too many Terminator movies and, think Skynet's coming. So the AI for us is augmented intelligence, which means they give us the suggestions and then the humans go and actually do the work. It's not a self-healing type of thing yet right now. And, there's a lot of stuff that's involved in that type of thing. But, being able to get that information to you and save, thousands and thousands of man hours per month on being able to go in through and run systems, check are they okay, check the logs, see if there's an anomaly. Okay, if I see this anomaly and then this one and then this one, okay, I know what's coming up here, a kernel issue, and being able to head off those things and keep that uptime going and everything, is really pretty neat stuff.
Yeah, we're seeing some weirdness with the automation, though, right? That age-old server to FTE ratio hasn't changed much, right? And the productivity hasn't changed much because we're swapping skills, right? Instead of needing more systems administrators, yes, I'm getting maybe slightly better efficiency out of my systems administrators, but now replaced it with code writers for the automation side, right? And so there's this interesting push-pull here. I'm nervous around AIs writing code. Right. I think that's where we're really going to start to have when they begin to be able to create truly on their own, the provenance factor and the viability factor is going to become, a bit of a challenge, the Terminator thing. Right. It really is that kind of challenge. They become a little more aware and all of a sudden, what's the role of the human in the process. Right. But I think it's very interesting that, the cycle of automation and AI and machine-driven decision-making has come back almost around completely. I remember the early days of Watson at IBM was involved in building the hosts and things for the Jeopardy challenge that they did over a decade ago now. And we were thoroughly impressed by how smart that thing was now. And that thing's dumb now. That version of that 10 years later is like talking to a 5-year-old, right? And it's just amazing how fast it's come, right? I have a theory that most people are interacting with AIs every day and have no idea. Right? Call an 800 number. You're talking to an AI.
Hey, let me, oops, sorry, wrong screen. Let me try that again. Okay, let's do this one more time. Okay, can everyone see my screen? And thanks, Mike, Kevin, and John. That was really great information. Now we'd like to move into the question and answer section of our webcast. Did want to remind everyone, although we have several questions submitted already, I would like to remind you that if you would like to submit a question, just go through the Q&A option on your Zoom console bar, which is located, depending upon how you have your system configured, it's either going to be on the top or the bottom of your screen. So again, if you'd like to submit a question, just do it through that panel. Okay, our first question comes in from Alex, and the question is, can you comment on how the war in the Ukraine is impacting the cybersecurity posture of organizations?
John,
why don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, John, you can go ahead. We got good examples, real life examples of that. Go ahead, John.
I do. The war in the Ukraine has definitely increased the attacks on anybody basically. But I would say in particular, what we have seen is more attacks on our email system. trying to impersonate the C-level people, particularly Kevin. Those have definitely been a challenge, to the point where they're not just infiltrating email, but they're hitting cell phones and Teams, things that you don't think are vulnerable, but they are. So we've seen an increase in ransomware attacks with our clients. And we've been trying to beef up our podcast section so that we can do our best to advise people on what to do. 6 months ago, I started, I should say a year ago, but 6 months ago, I looked at our multi-factor authentication connectivity to our various clients, and it was amazing at how many people were not using multi-factor or two-factor of any kind, just using straight VPN, which sooner or later you're going to get hacked. And we did reach out to all of them saying, look, this isn't secure. You know, it's not secure. Here's what's happened to 2 or 3 of our clients. They were hacked, ransomware attacks due to you know, an MFA a VPN bypass. We're in the business of helping people restore and recover from attacks like that. Unfortunately, one of our favorite clients, they lost everything except a critical database. And we were fortunate enough that the software we were restoring was metadata driven, and we were able to rebuild the entire system, but it took 2 weeks. Backups, immutable backups in particular, air gap, I don't know, I question whether air gap is safe enough, because at some point in time it isn't air gap in order to get at it. But backups, especially the database, have become very critical.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would add,
go ahead.
as someone that they target every day, and I mean multiple times a day. I mean, we've looked at our logs and see how they try to impersonate me and everything. And in the old days, you know, I'm not going to say that we didn't have people click on links and, you know, donate a few, you know, Apple gift cards to someplace over across the pond, and it's happened, right? It's going to happen to everybody, but you need to know what you're getting into here. And you need to know it's not a matter of if, it's when. It's coming, you know, and you have to be, you know, the Ukraine has made it more, situation has made it more, you know, they've picked up the pace, and we can see who's coming in. We can see Russian Federation. We can see all of these things that are happening right now. And it's something you need to be very aware of. And I'll just give you a hint that if you ever see that you're getting a bunch of spam on your cell phone and everything like that, like, I didn't sign up for that website, I didn't sign up for that, everything, go check your email right away, because I can probably tell you that they're in your email setting up rules behind the scene to push emails for all of your banking stuff, all of your financial stuff, important stuff, to go to them. That's how we found it. We knew something was wrong, so we immediately did it. And, you know, the only thing lost was, you know, a few 100,000 sky miles. Like, I'll be honest with you. Like, just because you have all these things and we do all this stuff all the time doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect. And we've had to put in another tool and another tool and another tool. And you get to a point to where you can only, you know, block so much, but it's the awareness and the training that is key to the front end of this, to make sure that nobody's clicking on these links and you're not getting malware and all of these things. It's very sophisticated stuff what they're doing here, and it's getting worse.
I wanted to make one more comment. Something that Kevin uncovered during one of the major attacks that he had is a lot of what you're seeing on training and education is worrying about your passwords. It's only half the battle. The other half is your ID. And if you use your email address as your ID on places that you go to and sign into, you've given away a big part of the challenge. So if you are registering at a website, it's probably, you can save yourself half the battle just by not giving away the ID. You create something that isn't your email address, something that only you know.
Yeah, you know, there's 2 things that we've kind of come across, you know, in this whole period of just the horribleness that's going on in the Ukraine. One of which is, you know, several industry sources, including our own, have, you know, pointed out that about somewhere between 10 and 18% of the software development talent and technical talent in the world comes out of the Russian Federation and the Ukraine. And so, you know, there's adding additional challenges to the labor pools and what have you. And early on in the war, there were a lot of people that were trying to do the right thing by hiring Ukrainians, right? And since the cultural and social fabric of that nation is just gone, there's no way of validating who's who, right? And those types of things. So there's a lot of extra risk in the system in even trying to do the right thing by hiring people from that part of the world. The second thing that I thought, when I thought about it for a couple of minutes, one of our security analysts pointed out that they were communicating to most customers that you need to remind your employees, because you have really interesting skills that might be used to help the cause of righteousness and justice, doesn't mean you should do them on your corporate time, or you should use them even your personal time. When you're hacking or doing activist things in the time of a conflict, those things can be construed as, legally dubious, but also an act of war, right? And so there's been a lot of communications in large enterprises that have large code shops about no extracurricular activities in the support of the cause, right? Because of just the risk that are there. So I think it's going to be a very interesting posture as it goes on. And as it gets more desperate, I think you're going to see, we expect the amount of an tremendous increase in attack, as things get more, kind of just deeper into this conflict. The other thing too, guys, I think the other thing is not just the war in the Ukraine, but, for the 2 years, the pandemic masked a lot of this security stuff, right? Ransomware and SolarWinds, and we had other problems, right? And now everybody's scrambling to try to figure it out. And, I'm sure you guys have seen that, as we begun this, long journey back to whatever normal is going to be, you've had to have seen, not only the attacks go up, but also the awareness, right? And customers reaching out for mitigation or prevention as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I know we're running short on time. We do have time for one more quick question. And Alex, again, thank you for your question. Our next question comes in from Alyssa. And why should I consider augmenting my internal team with external resources using a managed services model?
Well, for one, the internal team will always get better if they're partnered up and you have the right partner, right? You're going to learn from them. Having only your people involved in it just gives your view of the world, and you don't really see outside there what other people are doing. So it's a learning part of it too. And if you have the right partner, they will bring you in, they will make you better. It's one big, family, so to speak, in there to do it. So there's a lot of good learning on that side of it. Look, there's book learning, there's audio learning, and then there's real life. And how do you really do it? And having the right partner help you with those kind of things makes a whole way greater than the sum of the parts.
Yeah,
a lot has changed too in the last few years. It's really, historically, it's been hard for any team to keep up. But even think of 10 people that have a job responsibility, and what's changed in the last year. Compliance has changed. Dark web monitoring, firewalls, patch management, spam, anti-malware, even things like ransomware negotiations or insurance, right? Cyber insurance has changed dramatically in the last year. When you used to just have to answer 5 or 6 questions, you now have a 5 or 6 page spreadsheet if you're lucky, and even then you might get denied. So an MSP can augment your existing skills where you may not have the flexibility or time to get everybody educated.
The best relationships with MSPs and SIs are the ones where they're an extension of your team and they have a stake in your success. And I think you guys hit on the really big ideas there. But we're seeing more and more that because of the rate and pace of change, that outside expertise, right, gets us out of the big problem enterprises have, which is we all sat in the conference room and thought it was a good idea, right? Because we all eat, sleep, and drink and breathe the same air. We sometimes don't see the forest for the trees. So that level of interaction, we are seeing, lots of questions now in conversations with end customers looking for MSPs and SIs around, responsiveness and account management practices and knowledge transfer and those types of things, as well as needing the good, strong technical chops. So, if you're partnering with a good partner like GSI, you learn to cherish, value, and invest in that partnership because they're going to give you better results than transactional vendors that are out there.
Yeah. And, like you pointed out, Mike, the speed to affect change is extremely important, especially on the cyber side right now. I can't tell you how many tools and things you got to go through, and it's literally every single day there's something new and that you have to address, and you have to, you know, to keep ahead. And it's a tough race to keep ahead. You know, it's like, you know, these hackers are like Usain Bolt. You know,
Yep.
you got to go there, and you got to hope that you're in the, you know, the long race, not in the short one, because you're losing the sprint. There's no question you're going to lose the sprint. You have to just hope that you can, you know, to carry on the marathon, and that's what you got to keep doing here. And that's when having a provider, a partner, really makes the difference there to help keep you ahead.
Agreed.
Okay, well, I know we do have several outstanding questions, and we will get back to each of you with the answers. We're running short on time, so we do need to keep things moving. Thanks again, everyone, for your questions. Mike, Kevin, John, great information. As a follow-up from today's roundtable discussion, when you exit the Zoom call, you'll get a survey which will appear on your screen. Please fill it out. It's really important to us if you can fill that out. And we'll be doing a drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card. Anyone that completes the survey is going to be eligible, will be entered into contest and be eligible to win that $25 gift card. Will notify the winner after today's meeting. You'll also be receiving an email with a link to a recording from today's meeting. You should receive that by tomorrow. And then if you have any follow-up questions that we can answer, please contact us at, you know, any of the contact information on our screen, and we'll be glad to get back to you as soon as possible. Again, anyone that did submit a question, we will respond to you individually on those answers. Yeah. Thanks again for attending our presentation today, and have a wonderful day.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.